I want people to like it. They don't have to be, 3-time Pulitzer Prize winners. Like, do people who like poetry enjoy this collection enough to want to help bring it into the world?
What's good? I'm Nikisha Elise Williams, and this is Black and Published, bringing you the journeys of writers, poets, playwrights, and storytellers of all kinds. We're continuing our celebration of National Poetry Month with today's guest, Ashanti Anderson, a screenwriter, playwright, and poet. We discuss her debut chapbook, Black Under, where she said she made the conscientious decision to not center the white gaze.
I wasn't quite realizing like what those expectations were and how they were being voiced until I got to where it was like, oh, a room full of white people who respond most strongly to some of the more traumatic pieces. It kind of clicked that, okay, this is a thing, but also this is not the thing I want to do. During my career, this is not what I want my career to be.
A New Orleans native who identifies as Black, disabled, and queer, Ashanti has explored career paths from writing to cardiology. But she says it was something about those words that kept drawing her back in. On this episode, Ashanti explains why she had to take a 2-year break from writing after getting her MFA, how she would change the end of the Bible, and why when it comes to getting her work out in the world, it's all about the art. That and more when Black and Published continues. When did you know that you were a writer?
I think I knew I was a writer firstly because other people told me I was. I was just doing my thing. I had stories, I had ideas. And it really wasn't until I believe in like elementary school, I got like an award for writing a little essay about Black civil rights for Black History Month. And from then on, like my parents kind of knew like, okay, this is a thing she's going to be doing. And I'm not going to lie, I did stray quite a few times, especially, going through college, trying to figure out what I want to be. Is writing a real thing I can do and all that? But I mean, it's been a part of my life for as long as I could read, pretty much.
But you said you strayed when you got to college and were trying to figure out, what to do. Is this a real thing? So what was that journey like?
Yeah. Honestly, I spent like whole high school and some of college, honestly, like every week I wanted to be something different. And when I tell you, it ranged from like, okay, maybe I'll be a writer to like, I'm going to be a cardiologist, like one of the, not just a doctor, but one of the highest paid doctors. Like I was like literally all over the place. It got to the point where like teachers, guidance counselors were like, okay, what is it this week? What are you doing this week? So there was like a lot of going back and forth, I guess. So I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in psychology just because that's something that always interests me. My mom went back to school. I was reading her psych textbooks, like diagnosing people unofficially. And I was like, okay, this is a thing I could commit to for at least 4 years. And then during that time in college, I was taking creative writing classes. And that's when it really stuck out that like, okay, this is still the thing that honestly brings me the most joy, the most pride, the best sense of the clearest sense of purpose. So I just went from the bachelor's to getting my MFA, and it's been pretty consistent career-wise since then.
Okay, so once you finally nailed it down to, okay, writing is the thing, even though you tried to explore heart surgery, which baffles me. What was it like in your MFA program? Did you immediately want to write a book, write poetry, fiction? Like, what was that like? How did you come to decide on poetry as your discipline and what you would write?
Yeah, so to be to be clear, I write a little bit of everything, but as far as going to school to get the MFA in poetry, like when you apply, they ask you, like by the time you get there, you are supposed to know what genre you want to focus on. And poetry, even in undergrad, was the thing that I realized, like, okay, like when I write this, like things happen. Like I'm having conversations with people are responding in this way. And for me also poetry is something, it doesn't require as long of an attention span as fiction. So it's a bit easier for me to accomplish in that sense. So I went in definitely wanting to be a poet, also taking other classes in other genres, of course, trying to get as much information as I can. But poetry is definitely the thing that I felt like I could make the biggest impact at the time.
And so in making that impact, what did you do with it after you got the MFA? Did you just start working on the collection that you're working on now with the chapbook, or did you take another detour?
I I wouldn't call it a detour, more like a break. So I to graduate with the MFA for this particular program, we had to have a thesis. My whole idea was this thesis is going to be my first book, and when I left, I did have a book length worth of poems, but it was things that you know, carried over from those 2 years that I was there, um, which also had a bit of like an emotional range, subject range, everything like that. So I took a break, got myself together, looked at the thesis a while later, and really started pulling out like those threads, like what really goes together, and also what do I want to say, what do I want out in the world, and that turned into a much more concise collection, but one that I feel overall is much stronger than if I would have just tried to publish everything I wrote over the course of 2 years.
So is that collection this chapbook that you're putting out now?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So then the chapbook is called Black Under. What you kind of discussed a little bit of taking a break and then coming back to the collection and pulling the threads together that made the most sense in terms of cohesion. Why did you feel it necessary to take a break, or why did you take the break before coming back to like giving it a fresh set of eyes?
Yeah, so to be totally honest, the big reason was I needed to heal emotionally.
Mm.
Um, I went to a high school that was predominantly Black. I went to a HBCU. So when I went to my MFA program, it was really one of the first places where majority of the folks reading and responding to my work actually didn't look like me or necessarily understand where I was coming from, right? So with that comes quite a bit of emotional labor and expectation management and all these things that I really just needed some time and space to let go of and figure out, what do I want to say, not necessarily like what do I want to teach people or, what am I trying to explain, but like literally, what's the book that I'm writing for me.
Do you feel like your MFA experience somehow altered your voice and that you couldn't find what was authentic to you because you were in a different space with people and an environment that you weren't used to?
No, actually, I feel like it strengthened it. It was just a process that extended beyond those actual years at the MFA. Because to be honest, I had already in college, in undergrad, people, uh, non-Black people looking at my work, right? Um, a lot of my creative writing teachers were white. So this was already a gaze that I don't think I was totally conscious, because at the same time they were a minority in that setting. I wasn't quite realizing like what those expectations were and how they were being voiced until I got to where it was like, oh, a room full of white people who respond most strongly to, like, honestly, some of the more traumatic pieces. It kind of clicked that, okay, this is a thing, but also this is not the thing I want to do my during my career. This is not what I want my career to be. So it actually was just illuminating. And it did still, like I said, take time to step away and really truly process and identify like the writer I want to be, and the things I want to say, and getting rid of everything else. But I don't know that. I'm afraid that if I wouldn't have gone, I may have just kind of gone through the motions and not necessarily become conscious that this is something that that readers are doing, and you have to take responsibility, or like you have to be aware of that and make sure that you're not writing for anybody else.
Ooh. So then, in discovering that those who were evaluating your work and your thesis responded to some of the more traumatic poems or the more painful poems, and trying to figure out, you don't just want to be a writer who details and explores trauma in the name of art or entertainment, then what was the conscious decision that you made when you came back to the work after taking a break from it, to say, these are the things that I want to talk about? Like, what was that light bulb moment for you about, what exactly you wanted to include in the chapbook?
Yeah, I tried to center joy. I tried to center the complexity of Black emotion. And I also, the poems that are in Black Under are those poems that when I think back to when I first wrote them, I had to think back to the state of mind I was in when I wrote them. Did I write this as a reaction? Did I write this as a response, or did I write this because this came out of my own heart? Um, so, because I'm not saying, Black Under isn't a chapbook that's just full of, laughs and giggles, and, it's some heavy stuff in there, but it's important that when that comes, it comes from me and not, the idea or suggestion or impression or expectation of anybody else. So I had to make sure that that's where it was coming from me.
Well, you say you took a break. What did you do? How long was your break from between your MFA and coming back to the collection? What were you doing in that time?
It took about 2 years. What was I doing during that time? Honestly, I was feeling sorry for myself.
Why?
Just because at the end of the day, like it did, even though it is something that I think was necessary for my growth, it still wasn't a totally pleasant experience. And this isn't to say, one thing about institutions is it doesn't matter individually how nice or well-meaning individual people are. That institution itself, everything culminates in violence, right?
Mm.
So I just had to I just had to take some time and be like, oh no, I wrote all these poems and half of them I know, like I don't even want to do anything with them because it's honestly just me venting and trying to get frustration out, right? And um, basically, some friends, loved ones, just had to be like, "These poems are good, pick the one you want, but like if you throw this whole manuscript away, I'm gonna choke you." And so, like, I had to, just be be confident in my own ability, and be confident that there was still something there. And once I kind of got back on my feet that way, I just hit the ground running.
Okay. So then what was that like once you got back on your feet after those 2 years of self-pity? How did you come back with fresh eyes to say, this is what the collection is going to be?
Honestly, it went by really fast. Like once I got over my little personal hangups, like because the poems were already there, right? So it was just a matter of choosing which ones were saying what Ashanti wanted to say,
Mm-hmm.
right? And from there was a little reworking, but the funny way these things turn out is that those are the poems that end up already being a bit stronger anyway, right? It was like a little revision here and there, shaping it up. Then I sent it out to Black Lawrence. They had a chapbook competition, um, left it alone. Got that email. I was like, whoa, would you look at that? Now I gotta tell all my friends they was right. Like it was a huge I told you so moment for a few folks.
So then let's talk about that because this seems like a very charmed experience after the sorrow coming out of the MFA program. What when you were thinking about publishing and putting this book into the world, what exactly were you looking for in a press, in a publisher, and how did you start their journey?
I had I valued artistic um, autonomy, integrity. I wanted a press that if I was like, I want to put this on the cover, they would be like, cool beans, let's do it. Also, someone who um, ideally would give me great distribution. A lot of chapbooks don't have that, right? You print a limited number of copies. When they sell, your chapbook becomes a rare gem, which is valuable in and of itself. But for me, I just want more people to be, in conversation with me, my work. So I'm like, the longer it stays in print, the more y'all, distribute it, the better for me. Cause I always love hearing from new folks who are like, wow, I got this book. I didn't know who you were. Can we chat? I'm like, yes, always. Um, so those are two things that Black Lawrence Press already had just built into to their to their framework. They treat full size collections and chapbooks equally. They don't spend less time or effort on chapbooks, which is great. So they were honestly like the number one pick for me. Um, in general, though, I'm also very into presses that like work with the author. That's the main thing. Like, are you hearing me, or do you have your own separate vision? Because once again, that's something I'm trying to get away from, right? So that's a huge priority for me.
You said there's something you're trying to get away from in that you don't want to have a lot of other voices influencing the way that you work or the way that you write, or like what do you mean by that?
Yeah, not even so much influencing, but dictating, right?
Mm.
Which up to a certain degree, like I acknowledge that part of that's on me because you can let people dictate some things, but I try to look at, organizationally, like, do y'all have a tendency to prioritize what the author wants? And that's something that I really respect and look for versus like we're happy to do it our way and we might think about what you want. Like, no, I'm not totally into that because I can't say I won't be influenced. Like I talk with the editors all the time and I'm like, well, what do you think about this versus this? And I can take that into consideration. But at the end of the day, they're like, what do you pick? And I'm like, thank you for giving me the power to be able to make those decisions with my own creative work.
Okay. And so then you said that you saw a contest and that was how you got with St. Lawrence, even though they were your number one pick. So what was the nature of that contest?
It was one of those few contests that didn't have that big name. That wasn't a big thing for me. I'm like, I want people to like it. They don't have to be, 3-time Pulitzer Prize winners. Like, do people who like poetry enjoy this collection enough to want to help bring it into the world? And that's basically who the judges are for Black Lawrence Press.
So for you, it's more about the art than the name.
Yeah, for sure. Once again, them having that worldwide distribution is great. It's an awesome plus. But yeah, giving that autonomy to the artists and really being a good community of folks who just love poetry.
Okay. Well, we've talked about the writing and the publishing. So let's talk about the book. Do you have your collection with you to read a few pieces from it?
I sure do. Yep.
We want to read 3 pieces and then we'll talk about the book itself. All right, Black and Published family. Before we get into the reading, here's a little bit about Ashanti's debut chapbook, Black Under. The winner of the Spring 2020 Black River Chapbook Competition, Black Under is a collection of 15 poems that examines the Black experience in a multitude of ways, from the gore of trauma to the inexplicable joy of singing and dancing with your whole soul. Here's Ashanti.
Alrighty. Well, yeah, let's start with that one. Answer to an earnest prayer. True, I don't make mistakes, but I was trapped in a man's body 33 years, and I killed myself. Signed, God. One I want to read is If, which is written after Sandra Bland. So, If. July 10th, 1040. Lady Godiva rides through town nude on horseback to force her husband, the Earl of Mercia, to lower taxes. July 10th, 2015. Sandra Bland is pulled over by a state trooper for an alleged traffic violation. If I ride bare-breasted, bareback, if my hair were long, trail through a city, if I could convince my husband, if he might contemplate my modesty, to lower injustices, if he were to look, my fuzzy mound to decide, be fair, if I could, to the people fair as the under of hand, ride, if I were on a horse, several centuries, if I may, part my river of hair to show the man, if he might stare at my hilly breast, he think himself an emperor, if I a lady. Might he not lower woman like tax? Might bones not beat ground like hoofs? If my new clothes were no clothes, if I stripped and mounted nude, lesser ribbed counterpart, if I undress for him, if only to change, for every life, if I want to save, if that includes my own, if I weren't afraid to say either of our names, if the officer could have seen her and her mother too, if my body brought better, if would it mean something that Lady Godiva traversed the city bare, even if many wars ago, hitched hips to horse as if a lover, the same day Sandra Bland was arrested, if a woman ride a thing, might she not be driven beneath it? And I also want to read Ode to Black Skin, which is one of my personal favorites. Ode to Black Skin. You are dark as religion. Remember, God could not have named a modicum of light without you. You are plum, black currant, passion, fruit in another woman's garden. You are black as and as if by magic. Black, not a sin, but a cave's jaw clamped shut by forgiveness. color of closed wombs and bellies of ships, you, dark as not the tree trunk, but its every cleft. I chart each crescent moon rising above fingernail and rub together my thighs for want of you. I try to find you where the pages of books meet. You hang where men or piano keys segregate. When I miss you, I remember the hickey the sun left on the back of my neck. If I forget, I smoke blunts down to my fingertips and beg you to come on my lips. This is how I pray for you when I'm not pessimistic. I bow to your darkness like I kneel beside a child's bed, confessing as gospel. There's no monster here.
Thank you. So, in reading the collection, especially that first piece, the last piece you read, which is the first piece in the collection, I'll start there. I wrote that, Blackness is not monstrous. It's sexy, it's sensual, it's sacred, desirous, and the color of everything in the world that is good. And I feel like starting off the collection with Ode to Black Skin kind of sets the tone, because by the get to the end of it, I was thinking of the title, like it's called Black Under, and I kind of felt like in reading, it's like showing the underbelly of Blackness and where you must deal with things to get free. And so in crafting the collection and picking out the poems that, really spoke to what you wanted to say, what was the feeling that you wanted the reader of these poems to get or to leave with after reading this collection?
I think exactly like you said it, black black skin is amazing. It's beautiful. Blackness itself, is something to celebrate. And I definitely, Ode to Black Skin is the first poem for that reason, to set that context that even though, some of these poems may, like I'm talking about Sandra Bland. I have poems in here that address slavery, these things that probably don't immediately come to mind when you think about joy, right? But these are beautiful people, and they had to exist under what has been used to confine and constrict us, right? But just to start off with, like, this is an ode. This is not a criticism or a any kind of disparagement. Um, I'm celebrating our tenacity, right? Our our ability to get through it one way or the other. So that's really what I wanted to center, when picking out the pieces that would make it into this collection, is like, what even if the subject matter at face value may seem, negative or even depressing in some cases, right? But can we still find, that beauty and that love for Black people within it? And I think that these are the poems where I was able to speak that truth the loudest. And that's how Black Under came to be as a collection.
I found it curious that you said it was like more of an ode to Black joy, but then I guess in hearing you talk about it now with that explanation after the reading, it seems like, you want to embrace the fullness of the Black experience, even the painful parts, and show that there is joy in that too.
Exactly. Because what I'm noticing actually is that there's this interesting, like, pivot going on where there's times when things happen, these high profile cases that make it on the news, right? And then all of a sudden, people become very, very hungry for our trauma and our distress and our pain. And then in other times, like, there's these movements like Black Boy Joy, Black Girl Magic, which are great, and wonderful. But personally, I'm like cognizant of the ways in which both of those things can be manipulated to looking or seeming very one dimensional, right? And in reality, you don't have one without the other, as we're living here, right? And that's something that definitely, and that's why it couldn't be necessarily an ode to Black joy, but it had to be an ode to Black skin, because possessing this skin comes with that full complexity of emotion. And yeah, that's really the heart of it. Like, there is joy, there is pain, there is beauty, there is hurt. All these things can exist at once in one poem. And I try to do that in several different contexts. Like, we complicated, we going through a lot, but I mean, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to witness. It's beautiful to think about.
I feel like you cap off that thought with the last poem in the collection, Resignation. You have the line, understand, I am done writing about the Black girl emptied. I am off to find a brown boy with his ghost still in him. I thought that resonated so well and was a beautiful way to end the collection, because there is a lot of death and there is a lot of slavery and there is a lot of searching for something like freedom. But in the end, when you say resignation, it's like no matter what, it's about the living in the present and going off to find the good things and not just the negative experiences.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. And of course, there's always gonna be something, right? Like, life's perfect. I mean, life's not perfect. Look at me, wishful thinking. Life is not perfect. And yeah, that resignation poem, I'm even getting at that in that one, because the last couple of lines are like, last week I slipped and busted my mouth on the asphalt, and if you want the blood, I will have for you my red, wet grin. I acknowledge that things are going to happen. We're going to hurt. We're going to be in pain. Where life is not going to be perfect, but you're going to see the smile in this. If I write it anyway.
Yeah, and like if you talk about the red wet grin and at the end of Resignation, but that also harkens back to your poem Self Portrait as Minstrel. And it was like, we have to perform our humanity in a way that makes people see us as human. And even still, in the way you wrote, it's like, and yet they still don't get it. And it's like it's a joke, but it's like the joke's on us because they still don't get it.
Mhm. Mhm. And that's ultimately where, like, the title for Black Under came from, just this idea that you can be Black and you can also articulate Blackness, in your performance of daily life, in your artwork, in your profession, and people acknowledge you as such. And yet, for whatever reason, like, we're still having a lot of the same conversations we've been having for years, for generations, right? So, me being aware that there's this performance, but also that it's potentially very um, futile. And and with that knowledge, like, it's on me to find, that joy in the performance, if I want to perform or not, because I can't do it to send a message or teach anything, right? I just have to, once again, going back, like, I have to write it for myself. Um, yeah, yeah. I Yeah, that was a poem that I wrote in the MFA that was kind of about the MFA that ended up staying in the book. Yeah, because that's ultimately, I think, how it felt in some cases, right? That I'm like, okay, you know, people like these poems. It's like, oh, you wrote about, this person, and that's so powerful. And then, like, you go home and like, life is normal for you,
Mm.
right? Nothing has changed. Um, and this was also during I was in the MFA when Trump was in office, right? So, and I was in California, so it's just a bunch of folks talking about how much they hated Trump's guts, and then not actually having difficult conversations or doing difficult actions, right? So I think that ended up being kind of like the catalyst, like, I can't do this for you because this ain't helping me get free. Like, this is just wasting my time and my energy. So that's kind of where that poem came from.
That makes so much sense in context of the collection as well, because with Self-Portrait of a Minstrel, you talk about, your performance, but then I think too, when you think about minstrel shows, the audiences were mostly white. And so in the environment that you were in, they're performing this seeming, humanity and equality and the wants of civil rights and equal rights for everyone. And yet, when you are experiencing it, it's still being experienced as a microaggression. I think that tension is very much there in that poem. I want to go back to something you said earlier about, speaking to the generations. Um, One of the poems you have is Mamie Till on Carolyn Bryant's Confession, which is pretty straightforward. Why did you want to reimagine what she would think or would say in defense of her son, Emmett Till, who, as we all know, was murdered in Mississippi in 1955 for allegedly wolf whistling at Carolyn Bryant? Why would you want to reimagine and revisit that and give voice to Mamie Till in defense of her son?
At the time I wrote that poem, that piece had just come out about how it was discovered, right, that Carolyn Bryant was lying on Emmett Till, which is something that I think unanimously Black folks everywhere already knew, right? Like this was not a surprise to us. And of course, this lady at the end of her life, all of a sudden, knowing she's not going to face any real consequences for it, is like, oh yeah, I lied on him. My bad. And it was I wanted to really take that poem and kind of just talk about like I don't have I don't have kids, but one thing I hear a lot from parents, especially mothers, is I know my child, right? Like they know, like you could play two truths and a lie with my mama if you want to, but she will never lose when it comes to me, right? Like she knows what I will do and what I won't. And I just wanted to reiterate, we knew this, she knew this. Like, who did you even tell this truth for? Like, why? Like, is this something did you want? Like, is this so your soul can rest? Um, because this is something we've already had to cope with, right? So it was just important for me to reiterate that yeah, we have problems, but we know the limits, right? We know what to do and what not to do. We know how to survive and we know what risks to take and not take. Um, and she knew that about her son. And when she said she want the world to see, what they did, you know, just this idea of like really question like who was the they. I also try not to center I, in general, try not to censor whiteness a lot in my work, to be honest, just as a general writing practice, right? So it was important for me to also contemplate, like, okay, like really, who is they? Because we're not thinking about them. Like we already know what they own. We already know she was lying, right? So who really is responsible? Like what could we have done as
Mm.
a community to have kept this child safe from these horrible truths that we already know exist?
Yeah, I can see that. So I'm gonna put a pin in that, and then I want to move to a quick speed round, a little game, and then I'll let you go for the day. What is your favorite book?
Oh, my favorite book would actually it's gonna be probably a little strange to some people because it's a children's book, but it's called The Graduation of Jake Moon by Barbara Park.
Who was your favorite author?
My favorite author is definitely Toni Morrison, hands down.
That needs no explanation. Who is your favorite poet?
My favorite poet would have to be, oh man, there's so many good ones. It might be easier to start with a book. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna have to go with Patricia Smith on this one.
What is the difference between poetry and spoken word?
For me, in my opinion, as someone who doesn't do a ton of spoken word, the difference is audience engagement. I think it's more built in with spoken word, just that community and that participatory nature.
What is your favorite song?
Honestly, this is also going to be probably strange. So my favorite song is actually that song on the Prince at the end of the Prince of Egypt with Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston, the "If You Believe" song.
Yeah. I love that. What brings you joy?
In total seriousness, food. Cooking it, eating it, sharing it with others. I love breaking bread. I love sharing meals. I love enjoying meals privately. I'm definitely a foodie.
Food is my love language. I completely understand. And what brings you peace?
Having time to be with my own thoughts. I try to make time for that every single day.
All right, now I have a little game for you. It's called Rewriting the Classics. What's the one book you wish you would have written?
Like just so I could have the fame associated with it.
For whatever reason.
Yeah, Beloved, and I would keep every single word the same.
Okay, so then what's one book you want to change the ending and how would you do it?
I would change the ending of the Bible, honestly. I think Revelation has gotten too many folks spooked out, especially in current times.
We living in the last days, child.
Yeah.
So then how would you change the Bible? How would you have it end?
I think I'll start with a disclaimer like this probably doesn't happen in a country that has not been founded at the time that I wrote it. So starting with that, and then yeah, I think I'll probably just try to be more literal, right? It's a ton of symbolism that people are taking literally, and it's like, no, that's my interpretation anyway. Yeah, I'll just spell it out for people. I'll be like, you will know when the world is ending, but the Revelation literally says the opposite, right? Like no one knows the day or the hour, right? But no, not me. If I rewrote it, I'd be like, y'all gonna know. Yeah.
All right. And my final question for the game. Name a book that you think is overrated and why.
Overrated. Honestly, Moby Dick. I'm just not a fan. I'm not a fan. I resent every English teacher that told me that was a great piece of literature because I still don't view it that way.
I actually had another guest who said Moby Dick was one of their favorites. So this is funny to me. All right. And before we go, my final question for our interview today. Once you're dead and gone and among the ancestors, what would you like someone to write about you and the legacy of work and words that you left behind?
I would like them to say that I helped them feel seen in their fullness. And that maybe I helped them articulate maybe things they didn't necessarily know how to explain about themselves yet.
Thank you, Ashanti.
Thank you so much.
Big thank you to Ashanti Anderson for being here on Black and Published today. Make sure you check out Ashanti's debut chapbook, Black Under. It's out right now from Black Lawrence Press. And if you're not following Ashanti, check her out on the socials. She's at Ashanti Creates on Instagram and Twitter. That's our show for the week. If you liked this episode and want more Black and Published, head to our Instagram page. It's at Black and Published, and that's BLK and Published. There, I've posted a bonus clip from my interview with Ashanti about 2 poems in her collection called Bust of the Beheaded. It's about how the human brain stays alive for 2 minutes after decapitation and what the final thoughts of her characters are. We go into all the details about these 2 poems. So make sure you check it out and let me know what you think in the comments. I'll holler at y'all next week when our guest will be Lawrence Jackson. Until next time, peace.